Welcome to Ganjadelic Happiness class here at Pleasureology Community College, a counterculture community college. This is a happiness class with a difference. Cannabis is part of the curriculum. I've been getting high myself since 1967, and it took me about 5 years to discover, because I happened to be immersed in the counterculture at that time, 1972, to discover the first pleasureology exercises that I learned that became the basis for a hedonistic lifestyle, an intelligent hedonistic lifestyle, an educated hedonistic lifestyle, a skilled hedonistic lifestyle, a lifestyle where we're not just impulsively blundering around, hoping that if we get as wrecked as we possibly can, happiness will somehow happen to us. That's what I call faux hedonism, false hedonism, impulsive hedonism, mindless hedonism, hedonism without direction or intelligence. And this class is to help us be intelligent hedonists. In fact, we want a culture of purity, actually, kind of like the Christians' sexual purity culture, but we want a hedonistic purity culture. We want to make our pleasure as pure as possible, without any negative side effects if we can, avoiding them as much as possible. There's always going to be a certain amount of pain and suffering in life, but we want to minimize it, and we want to optimize our hedonism and make our hedonism as purely pleasurable as possible, both at the time that we're enjoying whatever we're enjoying and afterwards. Now, this happiness class also is different from the ordinary happiness classes in that sexuality is part of the curriculum, specifically sexual pleasure and how to create more sexual pleasure for ourselves. And that's ultimately hedonism is its own reward. Pleasure is its own reward. Having a good time is its own reward. And one of the most pleasurable experiences we can have is sexual euphoria, both pre-orgasmic sexual bliss and then the actual pleasure of orgasm itself. And so the sort of the culminating point of this class will be learning to experience super euphoric states of sexual happiness and pleasure. This will happen gradually, naturally, all along. As you become more and more relaxed in the class, your sexuality will become more and more powerful. But then at a certain point, you'll be able to start doing some specific sexual exercises to learn. And we learn this through solo sex first, and then we apply it to our partner sex later. But it's easier to learn through solo sex. We learn how to satisfy our natural sex drive as completely as possible with lots of pre-orgasmic sexual bliss that fills our entire consciousness. And then when we're ready to have an orgasm, we trigger the orgasm reflex voluntarily when we want to. And at that point, the orgasm flashes through our entire consciousness, not just a narrow sliver of consciousness, but our entire field of consciousness and our body, for a very powerful, long, and completely satisfying orgasm, which is about 1,000 times better than the ordinary orgasms certainly that I was having before I started doing pleasureology. I'll be teaching you what I call the Free Thought Steve Ganjadelic Pleasureology program. Pleasureology is the science and art of generating pleasure, learning how we can take our own personal pleasure system, our body and our nervous system, and our sex organs and the rest of our body, and increase the amount of pleasure that we have in all of our daily experiences, improve our emotional health so that we are more optimistic and upbeat, and we have more emotional fortitude to deal with the problems of life that come along, that we are able to have calm and really well-connected relationships with other people, which is certainly one of the foundations of happiness in life, is to have really good, relaxed, connected, and emotionally warm relationships with other people. So I'll be teaching you this pleasurology program, a program where we learn to take our innate pleasure-producing system that's built into our bodies and into our brain and our nervous system and our sex organs. We're going to take that personal pleasure-generating system and learn how to use it as well as possible. We're going to learn how to tune it up first, get it back in shape, because the main block to happiness is as we grow up, we become more and more tense because demands are placed on us by life. You know, we're expected to do well in school, we're expected to behave ourselves and not get in trouble, and depending on if we have a religious upbringing, we're expected, as crazy as it seems, not to have any sexual pleasure, even after our sexual circuits have completely matured in the brain, which gives us an innate desire for, an innate appetite for sexual pleasure. Even after that has come online at puberty and we have strong desires for sexuality, if we have a religious upbringing, particularly a Christian upbringing, our parents and the other social authorities around us may have made us feel like it's a bad thing to have sexual pleasure, which is utterly crazy. The sensible thing is to learn how to satisfy our innate sex drive, the sex drive that is built into our nervous system, built into our body, and has been built into us by millions, hundreds of millions of years of natural selection and evolution. They have made sure that every one of us has an innate sex drive because that's the only way that a species can reproduce and perpetuate itself. So every species has a strong innate sex drive that demands to be satisfied. And if we are placed in the position of being in conflict with our own innate sex drive because of religious teachings, then we're fighting our own desires for sexual pleasure, and this creates a lot of tension in the part of our brain that is responsible for producing pleasure. The part of our brain that is responsible for creating sexual pleasure, if it is in conflict with itself and with a desire to avoid having sexual pleasure, then that part of our brain is tense. And when we do have an orgasm, the orgasm is not as expansive and not as powerful as we would like it to be. And it oftentimes leaves us feeling not sexually satisfied, not completely satisfied. Yes, we've had an orgasm and our sexual appetite has dropped for the time being, but at the same time, we don't feel like we got enough pleasure out of the experience to feel totally satisfied. And so a large part of this pleasurology program that I'm going to be teaching you is devoted to learning how to relax our pleasure-producing system so that it's not in conflict with itself, where we accept the fact that sexuality is one of our basic needs, like eating or breathing or drinking water. having sexual pleasure is one of the things that our brain really wants, and our brain loves it when we have an orgasm. And the function of having an orgasm is to satisfy our sex drive in exactly the same way that the function of eating is to satisfy our hunger drive, and the function of breathing in is to satisfy our need for oxygen, and drinking water or some other liquid satisfies our thirst and our body's need for bodily fluids. Now, even though sexuality is not something that's going to kill us if we don't have sexual pleasure, unlike if we don't eat, we'll die of starvation. If we don't breathe, we'll suffocate. If we don't drink water, we'll die of thirst and dehydration. Sex isn't like that. Sex isn't a survival issue. Sex is an issue of passing on genes to the next generation. And we only want to do that maybe once or twice in our life. If we want to avoid adding to the population explosion, we want to be very selective about the times when we do in fact use sex in order to create a member of another generation. But nevertheless, our sex drive is there all the time and wanting to be satisfied all the time, year round. Thousands and thousands of times we could satisfy our sex drive and have a really great time. But we should be careful not to be making babies at the same time, because, the world would be overrun with people even faster than is happening now. So anyway, but we need to satisfy our sex drive, because the sex drive is just as powerful a drive as the drive for food or any other need. When it gets in our brain, it makes us want to have sexual pleasure. And that's in fact what we should do. We should give ourselves sexual pleasure. Solo sex is the best way to do that without any complications. Partner sex, if you're selective about your partners, is one of the most sublime experiences in life. But solo sex is the most convenient and easiest way to satisfy our natural sex drive. And so when we learn to have super euphoric sex, we practice during solo sex. And in fact, we can go for our entire life if we want. Once we learn how to have truly satisfying solo sex, you can go through your whole life and have your sex drive completely satisfied and be very, very happy, and only have partner sex when you find a relationship where you really want to have partner sex because the two of you are really compatible and you know what you have in common in life. But anyway, I'm not here to tell you what kind of relationships you should and shouldn't have. I'm just here to say that solo sex is the most convenient and the safest way to satisfy our natural innate sex drive. And the only question is how to learn to have solo sex that is so pleasurable that we can feel completely satisfied even if we're not having partner sex. And if we're lucky enough to be having partner sex, that's wonderful. But we don't need to go out and desperately find a partner in order to have satisfying sex, because that can be very dangerous in an age where there is an epidemic of sexually transmitted infections that we don't want to expose ourselves to casually if we are intelligent hedonists. That's why I emphasize being an intelligent hedonist, a hedonist that looks forward, looks beyond the present moment and the present pleasure. We look beyond that and we say, well, what are the other possible consequences that could come if I enjoy this pleasant or this present pleasure right now? Epicurus, who was sort of the founder of hedonism back in the days of the Greek philosophers around between 200 and 300 BC, Epicurus said, all pleasures in and of themselves are good, but not every pleasure should be chosen, because some pleasures have after effects that are not good. And what we want is to choose pleasures that are enjoyable in the moment, and whatever after effects they have are also enjoyable. Like feeling very close to someone that you've had sex with, and that helps form a bond between the two of us. But where we don't have sexually transmitted diseases or unintended pregnancies resulting afterwards, or causing heartbreak to someone else that we're already in a relationship with. We want to avoid this kind of pain and sorrow, because as hedonists, we want to be pure hedonists. We want to have a culture of hedonistic purity where we give ourselves pleasure with as little unpleasure as possible. And of course that's a form of perfectionism. And I'm not in favor of total perfectionism. We should strive to do our best, but when we're not perfect, and we're always not going to be perfect, we don't beat ourselves up for being imperfect. We just accept it and say, okay, I screwed up. I will try not to make that mistake once again. I've learned from my mistake. If mistakes are learning experiences, then mistakes have value, because mistakes prevent us from making that same mistake in the future. But if we keep on making the same mistake, then the mistake have no value as learning experiences. They're just anti-hedonistic, basically. A mistake is something where the results are not hedonistic. The results are unpleasant rather than pleasant. All right. How hard is it going to be for you to do this program that I'm going to demonstrate for you, the Ganjadelic Pleasurology program? It requires time. It requires a time commitment. You want to put aside several hours a day, if you possibly can, to devote to your pleasurology practice, but at least an hour. Pleasurology, happiness, creating happiness, producing happiness for ourselves, rather than waiting for happiness to happen to us accidentally. Producing happiness and pleasure for ourselves is a job like any other job. However, it requires time and effort like any job. And if you're going to do it well, it requires not just time and effort, but skillful effort, intelligent effort, knowing what you're doing and why you're doing it. And that's what I'm going to explain to you, so that the time and effort that you put in to pleasurology will have the most benefits for you, because you'll know why you're doing it, and you will see the results faster. But it does take a commitment. This is not for casual hedonists. This is not for superficial hedonists. This is for people who are deeply committed to hedonism, who truly believe that feeling good is the point of being alive. If we don't feel good, what the hell is the point of being alive? The problem is most people don't know how to make themselves feel good, and that's what I'm here to teach you. But you have to be dedicated to saying, yes, that's what I want. I want to feel good. I want to have happiness in my life. And what this program will give you beyond the sexual pleasure that I've talked about, it will give you more of an emotional health every day of your life. Your whole consciousness will be calmer. You'll have a more optimistic view on things. You will have more zest for whatever it is you do, and you will experience more emotions. You will experience greater naturalness of your emotional responses. Your emotional responses will be spontaneous, they will be natural, and they will be wide-ranging. What we have to do in this program is return our pleasure-producing system that's in our nervous system and in our body, return that system to its natural functioning. And as I said, the enemy of pleasure is tension. This tension that has built up in us as we have grown up. we have learned habits of emotional tension. And what we're going to do is unlearn those habits and learn habits of emotional relaxation instead. Because relaxation is much more pleasurable than tension and anxiety. Anxiety is a form of fear. And anxiety creates tenseness throughout our body and in our emotions. So anxiety has become so natural to us because we have become anxious little by little as we've grown up. We've had lots of different experiences that have made us increasingly anxious, and now that we're grown up, we're anxious and tense, most of us. But we don't know it. We don't even realize it because it's been so long since we were actually fully relaxed that we can't even remember how that feels in contrast. Now, the first time that I actually was aware of how tense I was the first time I ever took LSD. I took LSD for the first time in June of 1966, right after high school. And my friend Brent got it for me. He was in a rock band, and they were the first guys in town that were getting high on psychedelics. And he told me, Steve, you've been wanting to try acid for a while. I've got some really pure, really beautiful, good acid. You've got to try this. So I did. And it was really a wonderful experience. For me, now everybody's brain is different. Everybody reacts to certain chemicals differently. So I'm not telling you you should try LSD. That's a choice that's up to you. And if you do, I would try mushrooms. I would, because they're more likely to be pure. The mushroom plant will, produce a pure psilocybin chemical. And if you're going to try something like that, I would recommend mushrooms. But anyway, the important thing, the thing that absolutely floored me when I took my first LSD trip was not the beautiful visions that I saw on the ceiling of these jewels that were flowing by in different colors and so forth, making lovely patterns. That was wonderful. It wasn't how fabulous the music sounded from my little portable stereo and how I could see the notes floating in the air, sort of, and how when the music would change, the colors of my visions would change and all of that. And when I went outside, how beautiful the world was as I walked in this lovely area that I happened to be in, and went down to a lake and saw the mountains, and just thought, well, this is so wonderful to live in such a beautiful universe. All of that was great, but what really, really struck me was that I felt calm for the first time that I could remember. I could never remember feeling like that. And it made me realize how tense and anxious I was running around being without even knowing it all the time. Because all of a sudden LSD calmed me down, calmed all of the circuits in my emotional brain, and caused the calmness circuits of my emotional brain to turn on, so that my emotional brain filled my consciousness with an emotional feeling of peace and safety. I felt like everything is all right. Everything's fine. I can just be here, enjoy being here, and feel completely content with just what's going on right here and now. I don't need to feel like I've got to go someplace or get something in order to be happy, which is the way I was going through my life. Oh, if I get this or I go there, then I'll be happy. So I was always craving. I was craving some experience that I didn't have. And I thought then I would be happy. But the LSD gave me an experience where I was happy. I was content. There's a song, sometimes all that I need is the air that I breathe and to love you. And it was that feeling I didn't need anything. All my needs were on hold. They were fine. They felt satisfied. And of course, then the psychedelic wears off, and we go back to being our normal self and our anxious self. Only now I realized I was anxious, but I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't have any experience in relaxation of any sort. My friends all were doing transcendental meditation, and they were all saying, "Oh, this is great, this is great." And I thought, I was too good for transcendental meditation. I was an intellectual. I wasn't going to get taken in by this mysticism stuff because transcendental meditation was too religious for me. I didn't want to do anything like that. I had grown up religious. I had left religion. I was glad to have left it. I didn't want to go back. And if you did transcendental meditation, you were supposed to not get high. You were supposed to stop using psychedelics, stop getting high on cannabis, and be happy instead by doing this meditation, by repeating some silly syllable over and over again, Rama, 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 or whatever it might have been. It was always a two-syllable little nonsense word that you would repeat over and over again, and that would supposedly make you feel happy. Well, everybody did transcendental meditation for a few years, and then they quit doing it because it didn't actually make them that happy. But I'm not saying there's no benefit to it. I think probably it did help people calm down quite a bit. And I think so. I think it was a good thing. But it shouldn't have been presented as a religious thing or a spiritual thing or as a way to know God. None of us can know God. God is unknowable. That's my personal opinion. So even though I ended up starting to do meditation a few years later, once I began to do pleasurology, and I have been doing Zen meditation rather than a mantra meditation. Zen meditation is simply paying attention to where you are here and now in the moment, and learning to distinguish when we are actually paying attention to what's going on and when we are lost in thoughts. Being able to distinguish those two states from each other. Paying clear attention or having a fog of thoughts that is floating around in our consciousness between ourselves and the outside world. For me, the best thing about Zen is actually driving, doing driving Zen. When you clear your mind of thoughts and you pay attention to nothing but what's happening in the traffic around you, that's the safest way to drive. Driving Zen is really safe. And Zen is something that you can do when you're high, although that's not part of the original Zen tradition. But you see, I'm not a traditionalist at all. I take various things from different traditions and I use them however the hell I want to use them. Any way that makes me feel better is how I'm going to use it. So I do physical yoga, I do yoga stretches, and I do them on cannabis. I do Zen on cannabis. I do sex on cannabis. And I think I have made a lot of progress. I made progress very rapidly in getting relaxed, precisely because I was combining relaxation methods with getting high on cannabis, because cannabis can really help us tune in to what we're doing when we do the relaxation practices. And as you probably know, whatever we do when we're high on cannabis is more enjoyable. And so if we're doing practices that are designed to make us feel better, if we do them on cannabis as well, then we feel even better. The cannabis helps us do the exercises in a way that creates more pleasure for us. And once we have relaxed ourselves, once we've learned how to relax physically, emotionally, and mentally, whenever we get high on cannabis, our cannabis high is much more enjoyable as well. So it works, it's a positive feedback cycle. The cannabis helps us do our pleasurology practice better and more effectively, and our pleasurology practice, by transforming us into a more relaxed and pleasurable person, makes our cannabis high more enjoyable when we get high, whatever we happen to be doing. Like, I love to be out in nature when I'm high, and it's my relaxation practice that has allowed me to enjoy the beauty of nature much more intensely than I ever could before, whether I was high or not. Well, what it is actually, when you combine relaxation methods and cannabis, and go out in nature, you can experience the beauty of nature in the same way that you would if you had taken LSD or psilocybin, but you're using a more lightweight psychedelic. The physical exercises that are the beginning point, the starting point for our pleasurology practice, these exercises are designed to loosen up what I call chronically tense muscles. Chronically means all the time. We have muscles in our body that are tense all the time and we don't know it. We have forgotten that we're holding those muscles tense, and we don't even feel those muscles anymore, because tense muscles basically drop out of consciousness. We're not getting any sensations from tense muscles unless they get so tense that they're painful. So before I started doing pleasurology, I was living entirely in my head. My head was full of thoughts, and I was only minimally aware of my body, except when I was masturbating, and even then I was mostly aware of my penis, not the rest of my body. The rest of my body wasn't playing much of a part in my consciousness. So what we're doing when we do these relaxation exercises, very easy exercises to do, like a shoulder roll, you lift your shoulders up, pull them back, roll them down, and bring them forward. I mean, that's as easy as you could possibly do anything. And yet it feels really good, and it's stretching out a lot of muscles. And you can do it the other direction, like that. I mean, that's just one example. I've been doing these exercises for 53 years now. So I have dozens of exercises that I do, a whole program of exercises that will work out every part of our body, that stretch out all the major muscle groups in the body, including your hands, including your eyes, all the muscles of your face. But particularly, there are certain areas in the body that are tense. The back of the neck area here, then the middle of the upper back area here, the lower back area here too. And then the hamstrings are usually very tight, and we need to stretch those out. And then, of course, we've got the extremities, the hands and the arms. But the shoulders very much need to be stretched out. The hip joints need to be stretched out. And then the chest, we generally stretch out the chest with breathing exercises. Slow, deep breathing exercises that sort of expand the chest and then relax it completely. And then, of course, there's all these muscles in the face as well. Lots and lots of muscles in the face to relax, but those are easy to relax. Basically, all you need to do to relax a muscle is two things. You move it a little bit, and you stretch it a little bit, and then you relax it. So the moving usually does the stretching, but sometimes you can you hold a position like particularly for the hamstrings, stretching the hamstrings, we just hold the position and let the muscle stretch out very slowly. We relax the muscle as it gets stretched out, and we just hold that position. I don't teach any of the kind of yoga exercises where you're standing on one leg or you're bending your body like a human pretzel or anything that the average person couldn't do. All right, I've taught these relaxation exercise classes for 12 years, 15 years actually, for our local community college. And many of my students were old and retired, but they were all able to do the exercises. Okay, these are exercises that you don't have to be in super good condition to be able to do them. You can do them very easily and gently, and you gradually get more and more flexible, and then it allows you to do the exercises a little bit more extended, stretching a little bit further than before, and your body gradually gets more and more flexible. So I'm 77, and I started doing these exercises when I was 23. And you'd think that, a 23-year-old, would have a more flexible body than a 77-year-old. But in fact, my body is more flexible now than it was when I was 23, and it's getting more flexible all the time. I'm still continuing to improve my flexibility, my bodily flexibility. And having a flexible, relaxed body is really good for your health because it allows the blood to circulate through your body. The blood brings oxygen to your cells and sugar to your cells and other nutrients, and it brings the immune system throughout your body. See, the immune system starts up in the thymus here, and it generates the antibodies that are needed to fight infections here in this part of the body, but then it has to go through the bloodstream to the rest of the body. And so the more that we keep our body flexible and moving our muscles, the more the blood can circulate and bring the antibodies throughout our body. And so we have better resistance to diseases, in addition to which, learning to become calm is good for our health, because the emotional brain that creates our moods actually sends hormone messages to the thymus gland where the antibodies are created. And it can change how our immune system functions. If we are anxious all the time and worried all the time, our immune system functions in a way to fight infections, like the kind of infections we might get from the outside if we get a scratch, if we were fighting somebody. See, anxiety is part of the fight or flight response. And if our emotional brain is constantly in that mood, a mood of anxiety, then our immune system will be shifted over to fighting things that we might have, gotten infected with, germs and so forth that we might have gotten infected with through a cut. But when we're calm, then the immune system, if it needs to, can devote its energies to another very important function, which is fighting abnormal cells that might arise within our own body as a natural function of life, the cells that become cancer if they are not eliminated. So the cancer fighting aspect of the immune system comes into play when we are calmer rather than anxious. In general, what we want is the immune system to be able to respond to whatever the real threat is. If it is an antibody or if it is a bacteria that's come from the outside and we need antibodies to fight it, then we want our immune system to respond to that, which it will if we are relaxed, and it needs to respond to an external threat like that. And the rest of the time, if we're relaxed, the immune system can be going through the body and just sort of doing house cleaning, cleaning up any abnormal cells in the body. There are special killer cells from the immune system that take out the kind of abnormal cells that start to multiply and can cause cancer. So, long story short, I'm 77 years old and basically have had super excellent health. I have really good health the whole time that I've been alive, and very few colds and infections of any sort. And if I do get a cold, it's like I'll get a cold one day, I'll be sick. I can feel myself coming down with the cold. I keep doing my exercises to keep the circulation going through my body. The next day, I feel sick for one day because my body's fighting off the infection. My immune system's fighting off the infection, the rhinovirus. And then by the third day, I can feel myself recovering. And by the fourth day, I'm basically well. So instead of a cold coming and settling in and staying in me for a week or two, it just passes through very quickly because I keep the circulation going with all the exercises. And I let my immune system take care of the problem. All right. So specifically, there's nothing that you're going to need that will cost any money except your cannabis. It's everything you do, you can do at home in one single room. You don't have to have a lot of space to do it. It's all very easy and it's all very pleasurable. And in fact, if it's unpleasurable, then you're probably doing it wrong. So, but I will give you really careful instructions how to do all the exercises. The important thing here is we're not trying to become perfect all at once. All right, we want a little bit of progress gradually, but we do this for a lifetime. This is a lifetime commitment. And you just keep feeling better and better the longer that you do your pleasurology practice throughout your life. Your emotions get better, your character gets better, your relationships get better, your sexuality gets much, much better, and you feel good as you're doing it. So I hope that you will come back for our next session, and I'll start showing you some of the techniques you can actually use to help restore optimum function to your personal pleasure system. Thanks a lot for listening. Talk to you next time.